It now gives me immense pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Mark Lemessurier. Mark is a teacher, a counsellor, a parent coach and a conference presenter. That's why he's here. He's also a prolific author, and he's authored 6 books on teaching issues regarding children in need. And in fact, his book, Teaching Tough Kids, won the UK's National Association for Special Needs in 2001 award. And his Parenting Tough Kids book from 2007 has become an international bestseller. Now, Mark works locally in schools and he's in private practice at Fullerton House over on, I think it's Neglectful Terrace, which is a beautiful Adelaide building, but what goes on inside there is nothing short of amazing in redirecting some of these troubled children's lives. So he works with children and teens that he affectionately refers to as tough kids, and those kids whose lives are much tougher than most and often made tougher for those who or their life is tough for those who love and care and educate them. Mark believes our mission lies in our desire to find ways to make a difference. And so without any further ado, I'd like you to welcome, please, Mr. Mark Lemessurier to the stage. Thank you, Mark.
Oh, good morning, everybody. That was a very gracious introduction. Sometimes I guess I feel the same way that you do about your work. You put your head down and you bottom up and you just keep going forward. And sometimes somebody says something pleasant about your work and you think, gee, that's terrific. Look, this morning I've got a presentation on dealing with difficult kids, and really this is a 2-part presentation because I want to tease out some other things this afternoon. But this presentation, to begin with, is for every orthodontist, every nurse, every hygienist, every receptionist, every practice manager. But there's a bonus to this presentation, and it is that you'll be able to take so many of these understandings today home and use them with your own kids. In this session, I want to play with what we call mindfulness. Mindfulness is couched in positive psychology. It's centred about thriving individuals, helping families to thrive, and helping communities to thrive. It's about helping practices to thrive too, based on relationship and connection. My contention is that difficult kids are a really different experience for every single one of us. Why? Because how we feel about them, how we react to them, it depends on so many things about us, our thoughts, our feelings, our expectations, our past experiences, our values, what's happening between us at home, what's happening between us at work. From a rational point of view, you know that you can't honestly control somebody else. You really can't control your patients, can't control your staff, you can't control your partner, damn it. You can't control your kids at home, really, but you can control how you think. You can control how you respond and actually how you choose to manage. So now you're beginning to see why the spotlight's on the screen. And guess whose behaviour the spotlight is shining brightly on this morning? You've got it, haven't you? This session's all about you. So let's begin at work. Who are your difficult kids? Are they those who constantly squirm in the chair, causing you to stop and start? But you're trained to deal with that, even though it's irritating. And even though some of those kids irritate you far more than others for some reason. Are they the kids who refuse to open their mouth or have a hypersensitive gag reflex? Again, you're trained to deal with that too, even though it's infuriating and it seems time-wasting. And what about the group of kids who won't clean their teeth? You know, the ones that you show their dirty teeth to in the mirror and they shrug. And then, in desperation, you invite their mother and father to come over and look as well. You know, they're hiding in the corner of the room. And to your horror, the parents actually look and shrugs as well. And you think, well, where did they learn their shrugging from? And then the mother or the father says, well, I nag him about cleaning his room. I nag him about doing his homework. I tell him to brush his teeth. Oh, he doesn't listen to me. What can I do? And you feel like saying, well, why don't you start acting like a proper parent? Why don't you turn off the TV and take away his bloody phone until he does it? But you don't, do you? Instead, you work in silence, burning with frustration. And then there are the kids and parents who openly have a war in front of you. You never asked for it, but you're a casualty in an ongoing family war. Your relationship with the teen, as well as your treatment plan, is completely threatened simply because it seems his mother or her mother is next to them. Oh my goodness, this is the stuff for a team of family therapists or psychiatrists. And then there are the kids who just won't comply. The kids who won't wear their appliances or rubber bands, or those who keep breaking them. I guess the truth is that when you really examine it in the cold light of day, the difficult kids are relatively few, thank goodness. But they do cause treatment problems, as well as unhappy patients and derailed outcomes. And what about at home? Do you remember the beginning as you prepared for the joys of parenthood? Oh, it all seems so natural. You loved him or her. He loved you. You could see a future together. You had good work prospects back then. Your friends were coupling up. Some even started having kids. Your parents began to ask about the pitter-patter of little feet, not to mention the ticking of the unmentionable reproductive clock. Yes, having kids, it seemed so very natural. It seemed the next ever so logical step to express our love. And then just a year or two into having children, a whole new reality dawns, one that's impossible to predict before you have them. Our kids, what is it about them? They freely touch or slap or hit our most hidden and secret buttons. Buttons that so few others rarely touch. And as those buttons are pressed, we learn many things about ourselves very quietly, don't we? We learn about our frailties. We learn about our bad temper, our anxieties for ourselves and for our kids, our fears, our dreams, our hopes, and sometimes we learn about our lost opportunities through our kids. Oh yes, being a parent, that's a human being's greatest challenge. And it's from being a mum or a dad that we learn so much about ourselves. And it's the same stuff we take into the workplace. Most of us never dream the extent to which our children will challenge and stimulate our personal growth. But if we let them, by not being overly righteous or having to bite back and have the last say, we do an immense amount of learning. A helpful way to think about how our kids experience our parenting style and how our colleagues and staff experience our management style is to use the social control window. It comes from the introduction of our new book, Raising Butte Kids, which has just been released. Oh, incidentally, it's here on sale today, and you will buy a copy, won't you? Thank you. As you can see, the social control window generates 4 leadership styles. Your style is the one others experience from you. Let's be clear here. It's not about your honourable intentions. Most of us have those. It's about the style you actually work from. It's how others see you. It's how others experience your management style. So it's got a lot more to do with gut and instinctive reaction than it does head and intention. Now, don't despair, because most of us spend some time in each one of these quadrants. And the length and intensity of our visits are ruled by our emotional states and the usual life forces that prevail. Most of us can identify a quadrant we tend to live in, a quadrant we default to when the proverbial hits the fan, and a quadrant that would be far healthier to live in more often. By the way, try not to be too tough on yourself. Try not to be too judgmental. Resist interpreting each quadrant as good or bad. They simply exist. And every one of us in this room today has visited every quadrant. What I want you to gather are some personal insights into how you manage at home and at work, and whether it's working for you or whether you still need to continue to tweak it like I do. Oh yes, you're in authority, all right. You feel that to lead, you've got to be seen very clearly as the boss. The one with the answers, who has the last say, who has the power. You're a good person, but this is how leadership looks to you. And you've worked hard to attain it. You are demanding, you are controlling, but you're low on empathy. The very ingredient that's required to build relationship, loyalty, and connection between people. You have in the literature over the years been described as having brick wall attitudes, or being punitive, or punishing when things go wrong. You demand high standards from your partner, your children, and your staff. You insist on being right, and others demonstrating respect for you because you are usually right. And heaven help anyone who makes a mistake or doesn't seem to hold you on a pedestal. You micromanage your children at home by closely supervising and controlling their every thought, their friendships, who they sit next to at school, who they play with after school, their curricular activities, the directions that you believe are best for them, and you do this, of course, for their benefit. You also micromanage quite competent staff at work too. Mostly they put up with it, and to debrief, you'll often find them huddling in corners, sharing with one another one of your uncomfortable power moments. At home and at work, when you're provoked, you trot out emotionally confronting phrases. You must, you will, you won't, I want it now. How many times do I have to ask? If you make me ask you one more, don't you dare. And at work, when you're confronted with a belligerent child or a teen, you're quick to grab back power. You're quick to let them know who's really in charge in this room. What flashes through your mind is, hey, I'm the one that went to university. I studied for years. I still do some research. I'm the one with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees. I deserve to be in control. And to stay in control at work, you'll generally keep your emotions in check. However, you've turned seizing opportunities to reassert your power into almost an art form. At home, when things go wrong, just as they do for all of us, your attention is on what went wrong, finding the culprit, and finding a way to let them feel your disapproval. You regularly hear yourself saying, whose fault was that? Who's to blame? Or what's the right punishment? You take on the role of detective, judge, and executioner. Rarely does the consequence concern how others or the relationship may have been affected and what the wrongdoer might do to make things better again. Sometimes you sense disapproval from extended family members at home or from staff at work about the way in which you manage. But you justify what you do because they don't have the very special insights that you have. Sadly, those who manage exclusively from this quadrant draw on a very limited toolbox at home. They shout at their children, they rant, they threaten, they demand, they bully, they smack, punish, and they also do something that is probably far more serious. They pull right back on the limited amount of emotion and emotional contact they give to their children by sulking and skulking and huffing around the house. The use of these tools will make some of your children very, very nervy and motivate others to be very confrontational, oppositional, and highly reactive. And as kids grow into young teens, there's usually a point where they begin to seek fabulous entertainment from a mum or dad's predictable emotional reactions, and they know how to press your buttons, and you've taught them so well. That's right, despite your supposed power and your rants, they've sussed you right out, and they work around you whenever they need to. Ever wondered why at work you have a disproportionate number of teenage patients who don't comply? Or worse, you have issues relating to connections with them? That's because when human beings feel unsafe, when human beings feel threatened, too challenged, it's human nature to fight back. Some will fight back meekly, others will fight back hotly. But a punitive attitude provokes an unpleasant response from children, teens, family, and staff alike. You offer little support and guidance to your kids at home. You're not strict, but you're not emotionally responsive. Actually, nothing much is happening between you and the kids. Yes, you love them, of course, but they just take more time, more emotion, more energy than you've got at the moment. So you're unavailable to give them the love and the attention all children need to attach to parents. As for your interaction with staff at work, you choose to be equally aloof and unresponsive. But there may be good reasons motivating your neglectful style. You may have inherited or hired mutinous staff and have learnt that by appearing neglectful, chilled, easygoing, you're less likely to enter into conflict with them. Nevertheless, it still eats away at you. It is, after all, your practice, and you paid plenty for it. On the flip side, as a staff member, maybe you've entered the soulless, neglectful zone simply to survive in your workplace. So you are literally in survival mode. Often those in the neglectful quadrant are struggling with poor health, personal relationship issues, depression, alcohol abuse, substance addictions. Perhaps you're overwhelmed by impossible financial pressures. For those who have plenty of money, rather than giving the kids your time and affection, you shower them with trinkets and gifts instead. And the supply of material possessions has become your interface with them, and you spoil them, hoping the things that you buy them will actually fill that hole that only time with you can fill. Even worse, you may have a wildly mistaken belief that dragging kids up without loving connectedness will toughen them up, ready to deal with the hardships that await them in the future. Or even grimmer, you may be contending with a genuinely disconnected personality, where it's difficult for you to reach out and consistently show affection. So let's do a survey. Don't put your hand up, okay? In fact, sit on your hands. You ready? How long is it since you laid on the back lawn with your child or with your teen next to you staring up into a tree, and spent 30 minutes chatting about absolutely mindless things. These are golden moments. They build protective elements within relationship that can be banked away as credit and used later when needed. The truth here is that you might not lay on your back on the lawn with your staff, work colleagues or patients. I hope you don't. Staring up into a tree for 30 minutes while you chat to them. But there's a consistent message here, isn't there? And it is, use the little moments that pop up to share, exchange thoughts and listen, because time spent doing so is priceless. Now, I know what you're thinking at this point. You've jumped into the moral high ground and you believe there's no way you, generally speaking, fit into this neglectful zone. Well, I disagree. What about at your house last Sunday afternoon when the kids were driving you mad? Remember feeling annoyed and fed up over them? Remember distancing yourself from them, choosing not to respond, ignoring them as they carried on killing each other on the back lawn? For a mini moment, you placed yourself in the neglectful zone. No right, no wrong, but a mindfulness about how we move around the social control window. And what about the other day at work? Do you remember 14-year-old Brad? Look, he's not a bad kid, but his oral hygiene, well, that's appalling. He breaks things too. And his oral hygiene was just shocking for the 4th consecutive time. But working within the neglectful quadrant, you didn't say anything. You kept your head down, you worked in silence, you made the adjustments, you cleaned his teeth as well as you could. You weren't motivated to be practical or tactical or build relationship. Yet you could have said, "Hey, Brad, you know what I'm thinking about your teeth, mate? Yeah, you need to clean them. They're not good at the moment. Mate, I like you way too much to argue about it, but it's got to step up. If it doesn't step up, we'll need to take them off." And then you could have pulled out a big gun by offering Brad a really positive plan with a great incentive nicely attached to it. At least it would have been an attempt to get him on side. Catching kids doing well and commenting on it is the best way to get the behaviours we want. Playing catch-up rarely works. Tell-off never works. There's no judgment here. Suffice to say that when we're in this neglectful zone, we eagerly discount being a skillful model and doubt the value of positive seed planting. We forget to encourage. We forget to set goals that we can achieve together. We forget to chase them, and we even forget to celebrate when we achieve some small goals. The point is that we need to acknowledge it happens, and we need to be aware when it's happening to determine whether it's appropriate at that moment. Let's head to the permissive window. Parents who live in the permissive quadrant have been described as jellyfish parents. I guess you'd be a jellyfish manager at work too. There is a lot that you do right, though. You offer the staff at work and the kids at home loads of time, loads of care, loads of support, and loads of encouragement. You're a real connector. However, you struggle to set up and maintain consistent structures. You know, those things we call rules, routines, procedures, systems, expectations. Instead, you fluff about a lot, serving up an easy-going, friendshipy style. You've actually replaced relationship and leadership with being best friends forever. You love being friends with staff, but sense that the way you do it is problematic. You know the same faulty approach gets in the way with particular patients too. At home, you quietly admit to friends that your kids are virtually the best friends that you always dreamt of. You are your staff and your children's most fervent supporter. Heaven help anyone who challenges any of them, because being permissive means you are their greatest protector and excuser in the right moments. Oh yes, anyone who holds your kids accountable for their behaviour will always have you to deal with, whether it be a friend, a teacher at school, the school principal, or a dear colleague attempting to do your son or daughter's orthodontic treatment as a favour. Interestingly, you do notice the way your child pushes at the boundaries, and this can be very annoying because they're not treating you with the same friendship you treat them. Your way to tackle this is to ignore it or to use humour to diffuse it initially. Sometimes, as an emotional outlet, you'll make light of your children's less than social behaviours, appropriate social behaviours, by documenting highly embarrassing moments on Facebook. Truth be told, this is the same approach you use at work with staff and colleagues, nurturing them and tiptoeing around them to keep the peace. Misguidedly at home, you talk to friends about your children being especially spirited. You tell others that there are two types of kids. There's the calm and compliant ones that the lucky parents get, and then there are the spirited ones that you've got because you can cope with them. It's all in the luck of the draw. Your one real source of frustration is that every so often the kids end up bullying you and being rude to get their way. They push to find the boundaries, but you haven't yet grasped why they push to find boundaries. All kids push to work out where those boundaries lie. So do human beings. They have to push and push and push to work out how far you'll go. This is a vital dance, and it helps kids feel secure, and it all adds to feeling like a child belongs, attaches, fits in, and feels secure. But for you, suddenly when you're pushed too far, you snap. And as soon as you snap, you become a raging, punitive parent. And your talk becomes nasty, and your response revengeful, when a measured negative consequence might have been in order. You find yourself taking their iPod or every available screen that they have away for 10 years. Oh yes, you're too severe in that emotionally reactive moment. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I kind of do this at work with patients sometimes. I kind of do this at work with colleagues too. Well, thankfully, I hope your reaction is tempered compared to what happens at home. Actually, our public reactions are usually tempered, thank goodness. But you probably have the same sets of feelings surging inside you, and your response is likely to make you feel huffy and emotionally withdrawn. With patients, you're likely to keep your professional persona, but deep inside, hidden from the rest of the world, you withdraw. Your communication, your emotional support, and possible optimistic treatment options for the future. And once your anger and disappointment settles at home, whether it be in a few hours or the next day, your style means that your guilt catches up with you. You know that you acted too quickly and you said too many damaging comments. Your unchecked feelings drove you to go too far. So your style is to deliver an exaggerated apology for your overblown actions. But it's all about sucking back up to the kids at home or staff at work. At home, it's preparing bacon and eggs for them the next morning. Or at work, it's bringing in coffee and cakes the next day. And what have we learned about permissive parenting or for children? Well, that kids exposed for this swinging situation actually often end up quite confused. Hey, so do staff. They lose their sense of self. their esteem, and what they're really capable of doing. So do staff. Over time, these kids become highly vulnerable, just as staff are likely to feel. Kids exposed to high-level, consistent, swinging or permissive parenting can be more easily attracted to marginalised groups, gangs, cults, bullies, who have a worrying power over them as they try to gain a sense of belonging and consistency in their lives. The research supports that an authoritative management style is most effective for good communication. At work and at home, we know it raises really well-adjusted kids. An authoritative style embodies adjectives such as respectfulness, leadership, being relational, confident, influential, decisive, reliable, trustworthy, solid, and emotionally steady. As an authoritative parent, you read your kids well because you're actually actively involved in their lives, and you do the same with staff at work. You sit together as a family for dinner. You encourage conversation, and you absorb how they feel about a range of things. While you value honest communication and expect cooperative behaviour, you also know your kids won't always get it right. When they make mistakes, you'll let them know without a "I told you so," or without giving them too much information too quickly in the heat of the moment. You're prepared to walk alongside them, offering them just enough guidance as it's needed. You understand that talk is lost in heated moments. Girls hear 3.2 words and boys hear 2.3 words. The window is very small. You understand the balance between building independence, smothering them, offering too much advice, and being overly critical. You understand that the same values are invaluable at work too, with staff and patients alike. And you've made an effort to understand behaviour. In other words, you try to interpret what is lying below the behaviour. What's motivating this behaviour? How must they be feeling? After all, emotions trigger behaviour. And on that, the 4 goals of misbehaviour. If I had a lot more time, this is fascinating stuff. You get this really short version. The 4 goals of misbehaviour were developed by these 2 good-looking fellows. Alfred Adler began his work in 1943, and it was popularised by his student, who later became his colleague, Rudolf Drakers. They explained what has become textbook understandings today. That is, most people set out to relate in socially appropriate ways. Surprise, surprise. It's only when they feel they're not succeeding that socially uncooperative or difficult ways begin to emerge. So how your kids at home, or a child, or a teen patient, or a staff member behaves is always an attempt to show you they need some more influence in their world. And here is their ladder of discouragement. And it's a ladder that all human beings follow when they feel they're not succeeding or feel beaten. Each rung on the ladder represents a deeper level of despair, and this is reflected by a deeper level of more difficult behaviour. And discouraged people, your children, your patients, your staff, your colleagues, follow a very predictable pathway. None of this is magic. It's well documented. And they climb this ladder rung by rung through the 4 goals of misbehaviour until their faulty logic allows them to believe they've reached a status completely worthy of them. Ever experienced a patient or a staff member climb that ladder? Did it get ugly? Oh, I'll bet it did. Hindsight, it's nasty, isn't it? As one of my 15-year-old boys said, hindsight, Mark, it's a bitch. But how might have you done it differently so they could have hopped off the ladder before it went bad? How could have you offered them a sense of belonging, a sense of influence that would have worked for you and for them? It's only when we're able to work with others in this authoritative quadrant that we can offer others a chance to show their influence in the world and succeed. In this quadrant, you recognise that respect has less to do with you being the mother, the father, the orthodontist, the hygienist, or whatever position you hold. You see, it has so much more to do with the tone that you create about getting along with each other. You actually try to create an air of warmth and respect. And when a problem does arise, you're able to deal with it so your kids, staff and patients are left feeling comfortable about the redirection. And in fact, the way in which you do the redirection strengthens connections rather than anybody losing dignity. You try and seize on setbacks and hiccups as valuable opportunities to create new initiatives, new positive directions and new connections together. You talk regularly with them, whether it's at informal or organised meetings. And you use words and phrases such as us, we, the team, our family, encouraging that unity at home within the family and at work with staff are highly prized. You constantly follow up, revisit, adapt expectations in an emotionally steady manner, giving everyone a say. Your talk is centred on ways to find improvement, strengthen relationships, and always to heal and make things right again. Wow, what a simple but powerful model. And I hope it will be emblazoned in your minds forever because it is so simple. I'm sorry about that. But it does provide us with a really enlightening insight into how we lead others, how we actually truly view our authority, how we use our authority at work and at home. So, did you discover which quadrant you largely live in? Do you know why? Is it a conscious choice or do you just do it? Is it working for you at work? Is it working for you at home? Do you operate in the same quadrants at work and at home? And when the pressure's on and you're feeling stress, which is your default quadrant? So the next time you're challenged by your child's or a patient's or a staff member or a colleague's tricky behaviour, place this new spotlight on how you operate. And think through a 3-step approach. You ready? 3 steps. Number 1, which quadrant do I feel like reacting from? 2, what's really driving this person's behaviour? What do they really want? And 3, okay, how can I push into the restorative domain to achieve a constructive solution that's largely win-win? Our challenge is to be mindful about the way we manage. Oh, I'd love you to see you at my session this afternoon. I promise to tease out a range of very, very specific things that we can do to motivate these young patients of yours who are tricky. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful.
I'm not sure where to start. Where were you 21 years ago, Mark? I found that most amazing, and I'm sure that your recently published book will become an international bestseller, probably by this afternoon, noting the variations of country of origin in this room. Mark, thank you so much, and I'd ask you all to again thank him for a most enlightening talk.